You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast, hosted by Zach Bechtold and Matt Franks. If you'd like to learn more about the Bearded Theologians, you can go online at beardedtheologians.com, where we have past podcasts, blogs, and a couple items for sale. So check us out, beardedtheologians.com. Thank you for listening, and enjoy this week's show. You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast, hosted by Matt Franks
and Zach Bechtold.
So this week on the podcast, we're looking at the Psalms again, and Psalm 119, 105 through 112 is one of the lectionary readings for this week. And, as we're kicking around, this is the one that spoke to us the best. They're all good readings this week and encourage you to look at that. But the one that spoke to us to feel like we'd have a good conversation was 119. So Zach, I'll let you kick us off with reading it because that's what you do. And so Zach, why don't you go ahead and start us with the word today?
Sure. So Psalm 119 verses 105 through 112, you'll recognize the first part of this for sure. Your word is a lamp before my feet and a light for my journey. I've sworn and I fully mean it. I love that part. We'll come back to it. I will keep your righteous rules. I have been suffering so much. Lord, make me live again according to your promise. Please, Lord, accept my spontaneous gifts of praise. Teach me your rules. Though my life is constantly in danger, I won't forget your instruction. Though the wicked have set a trap before me, I won't stray from your precepts. Your laws are my possession forever because they are my heart's joy. I have decided to keep your statutes forever, every last one. What sticks out for me, like I said, we know the first part of this, your lamp, your word is a lamp unto my feet, right? Beautiful song there. But I love so much about this because it talks, I'm not a rule person. I have a love-hate relationship with rules. And that seems to be where this revolves around, but it turns that corner, it changes the narrative that we take on what and who God calls us to be with joy, not with shame and guilt or fear, but with this joy of here's who God has called us to be, here's what God has called us to, even though it uses this language of laws and rules that at least I struggle with a little bit for a few reasons. But I love the joy in which this portion of the psalm is written with, that it's all springboarded off with your word is a lamp before my feet and a light in my journey. I have sworn and I fully mean it. That it's the writer's objective to say, hey, I have heard, I have seen who you're calling me to be and what that looks like, and I mean it. I'm going to follow you, God, and it's not just lip service, it's I'm going to follow you and live into this the best ways that I can each and every day. And I think something that we don't do well as people is actually mean what we say, right? I'll tend to that later, or I'll do this or I'll do that, I promise you. And we don't live into those things very well because we're human and we're fallible and we mess up sometimes. But there's a lot of lip service we give as people to one another and to God of, oh, I'm going to do better. Oh, I'm going to do that. And we don't. And I think that's something that the psalmist does well here to say, hey, no, I really mean this. I really fully am going to live into who you're calling me to be.
So as I was thinking about this, I was thinking of and then in the New Revised Standard Version, the word ordinances pops up two times. And
that's an expensive word.
It is an expensive word. And I think about ordinances, and I think about where we're at in the time, cities are bickering at each other because of the ordinances that they're trying to enact to keep people safe. And I think of that word ordinances as a sense of a rule that can like take care of us. Like we have ordinances to protect us. And those ordinances that the psalmist is actually asking for are, you know, things for protection, for guidance, for praise, for and you know, we see this, and I think this is one of the problems with it, because we have that Amy Grant song stuck in our heads, and I'm sure you're humming it as you think about your word is a lamp on it, to my feet and a light to my path, and you've got the melody in your head. And I mean, I do, I love that song. It's a powerful song, and I think we take that as just the written word. Mm-hmm. And then that's when we bring out that whole struggle that we have with scripture of like the authoritative word, and how do we live within that authoritative word when there are rules of oppression and hatred, and people have used it to cause harm. And like, so how do we reconcile the Bible, like our word, and how can we say that this is a healthy book, but like understand that some of these rules and ordinances that are in here are not necessarily healthy for today? And that takes a lot of discernment, that takes a lot of work, that takes a lot of like deep biblical theological work that most people aren't willing to dive into, or they start and they realize like, hey, like this is causing me to question a lot of things I was taught in Sunday school with the felt boards, and that angst is there, but there is some growth that can happen with looking at those and saying like, and trusting in God, that really, you know, the whole idea that God will never abandon us, loves us, and really calls us to love God and to love our neighbor. Like that's the authoritative rule that we should be guided by.
So are you telling me that we need something out there that takes, I don't know, like scripture and tradition, and maybe even like reason, throw some experience in there, something like that, that when we read scripture, that we can take all of that together and come to a conclusion that's not necessarily black and white literal?
Yeah. You know, in seminary, they called it the Wesleyan bar stool.
Sure.
Some of you may have heard it called the Wesleyan quadrilateral.
Another expensive word.
Expensive word. Hey, I pay. I'm still paying for these words.
I hear you.
To get them out there. But yeah, like I think we need to, and even more so in regards to the conversations that are happening in our world right now, whether it's the race conversation or the public health, like the public health conversation, like what does it really mean to love your neighbor? I mean, it's not that hard. Wear a stinking mask. Like, I mean, I love you if that's what you choose not to do, but understand I love you enough to stay away from you if you're not going to wear a mask. And I've had to say that to family members.
I love me enough to stay away from you.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting, you know. But I think we need to like really we have to do a better job in the church of helping people process scripture. And you know, the Methodists have a great tool for it. I think there are those that weigh too heavily on one or the other, and that's what causes you to feel a little bit wobbly. And there are people that like, I mean, I know people that are just like the Bible is it, but I also know people that like, no, it's about the experience. And I know people about the reason. Like I know people that are, you know, in all those camps.
Right.
And one of the things that I've been talking about a lot lately in our house is it's about balance. And we have to balance things out. And right now, like things are feeling like this. I mean, I don't know about you. Well, of course you freaking moved into a new house. Yeah. And so like, we need some balance. And I think that's where like this whole idea of the word is the lamp unto my feet. I think that's, to me, that's the guidance and comfort.
Right.
It's there. And like the scripture is the balance, like it can balance the act, but we have to look at those other things to help us become balanced.
Exactly. And that's the thing about it. You know, I talk about having a love-hate relationship with rules and laws, and scriptural rules and laws aren't exempt from that, but it's taking into account all of these things that help us balance this out, right? That help us read something in scripture that is oppressive, that is pro-slavery, that is anti-women, or whatever, right? And go no. And here's what we've learned from that, right? And here's where we've grown, rather than doing our favorite American pastime and cherry picking things. This is what it is, but it's not, because God has moved and grown and shown us as human beings throughout the centuries who we are and who we're called to be, and how as people we create rules of oppression and just really crappy things, and yet God's always pulling us beyond that. No, here it is. No, here it is. Time and time again, whether it's through Jesus or the disciples, or even back into the Old Testament heroes and prophets of, no, this is what I mean. Here's what you're doing. Here's what I meant. Or here's where I need you to go now, to move away from this. And I don't know that we do that well as human beings. I think we mean well. I think we say, well, yeah, I'll do that. And then we don't. Or it becomes too hard and we're like, ooh, I don't know about that.
That's where
or it pushes us, right?
Yeah. That's where I like verse 112 in the New Revised. I incline my heart to perform your statutes forever to the end. I'm just like, I'm inclined. Mm-hmm. I'm not committed. Mm-hmm. I'm inclined. Like, to me, that's the, like, I read that and I'm like, God, like the beginning of it's like, oh, you're it. And then like, well, I'm inclined to. Like, right. But that's human nature. I think that that's like, we have to find balance,
right?
To be healthier, to grow, and to see things in a new light does require balance. And right now the world is so topsy-turvy that we need some balance in our lives.
Right. Well, and I think, the scripture pulls out too that rules are those funny things where we're either going to flog ourselves in sacrifice and pain of following the rules, right? Or everything is awesome, and I really think this psalm pulls out, hey, there's a middle ground here where we approach these things with joy and reason and humility, that God is there with us. God is calling us to these loving things, and we don't have to flog ourselves when we get wrong. We don't have to blindly follow, but there's room and grace here to go, oh, here's where we find joy in who and where God's calling us to be.
Well, and I think that's where your idea of joy, and I like that, is but it's orienting us towards love. And orienting us, stretching us to love more and to love our neighbors more and to get to know our neighbors more. And what happens when we're stretched like that, sometimes we run and we close ourselves off in our safe spaces, and we're not willing to do that stretching growth. Like, you and I are both trying to be a little bit healthier. This week, we both started trying to do healthier practices. You started running, I've started riding, and we have to know how far we can go, but we have to, like, in order for us to be healthier, we have to push ourselves just a little bit. So then the next time we get to that, like 1.8 miles, we can go 1.9, because we did 1.9 and it hurt and it sucked and we paid for it for a week, but now we can do 1.9 a little bit easier. And it becomes easier the further we stretch ourselves, and we keep coming back to center and finding, like, understanding, knowing how far we can go. And getting there and saying, I'll go a little bit further today, and pushing it, but knowing that there are consequences to that, through our bodies, you're not going to go out and run 10 miles today.
That's how my heart explodes.
You're not going to go out and walk 10 miles a day because, but I think, but you could do 2. And that's just, that's your limit. But knowing where our boundaries are healthy, knowing how far we're willing to go, but then stretching, like looking and saying, all right, so when I come across this situation, can I stretch my boundary a little bit further?
Can I go this far today?
And I think, like, to me, that's where God is calling us to love. because I see us, like I look throughout all history, and then we're stretching that boundary of love, and what does our neighbor look like, and wrestling with that, and being reminded that God never gives up on us and never abandons us, even like sometimes when we, like, I love the prayer of confession says we've failed against your love, and to, like, we have to have some guidance, but I think that obedience of God, of living into God's way of love, is the key factor for all of this.
Yeah.
And so I think for today, the contemplation of today would be, how are you sharing God's love, and stretching yourself by doing it?
How are you drawing the circle wider?
Another good little song.
It is, right? Yeah.
So we want to thank you for tuning in today, and we hope that you go online and pick up some items for you and family members. I don't know what holiday is next. Just make up one and buy it for whomever. You can start stocking up on your Christmas gag gifts now, and it would be really great to have some Bearded Theologians. I'll call it white elephant gifts. It's that time of year. Start thinking about Christmas, because it's coming. It'll be here before you know it. So for the Bearded Theologians, I'm Matt Franks.
I'm Zach Bechtold. Thanks for checking us out.
First, guys, I want you to subscribe and like this video, and push that thumbs up.
Thank you for listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share on all social media outlets. You can check out old episodes and more information at beardedtheologians.com. Thanks for checking us out.